You think about the WPA, people got to work to win the war. We need to put people to work to win the war here against climate change.
This episode of the Rise Up podcast features Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, chair of the governor's task force on climate change. Barnes was joined by Nick and Amanda from the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, who asked him about what he learned after nearly a year of gathering input from across the state.
Well, hello, Mandela. Good morning. Thanks for meeting with us. I wanted to start with a little bit getting your perspective. You've been traveling around the state a lot, listening to a lot of Wisconsinites. So what are some of the different things that you've learned that have been really surprising from different individuals around the state in terms of what they care about, in terms of climate change? And I guess what stands out the most for you? Is there a specific instance or story that you weren't expecting?
If I think about even back from 2019 and the places we went, and we go to small businesses, we go to farms, we go to schools, we go to all these different places. And a lot of the visits weren't necessarily intended to be focused on climate change, but it was a recurring theme. It always came up, regardless who we were talking to. We would be in Bayfield, and the mayor would talk about how climate change is having an impact on tourism, and that is a tourism-based economy up there in Bayfield. And if climate change continues in the way that it's going, then they're going to be in trouble, like so many other areas. Another thing that I found that was particularly interesting, because so often the finger gets pointed at the farming community, agriculture in general, but obviously, they are as impacted by climate change as almost anyone else. But there are so many people in the farming community, so many farmers, so many in the ag space who are leading climate change efforts. And I think that's amazing. And through the task force, probably the most surprising thing was River Falls going to 100% clean energy for their city operations. And they're already there. And they did it, it was so under the radar. I had no idea that was happening. It's like, hey, you gotta say something. But, that was one of the more amazing things to me.
That's great. One of the things that must be noticed about you in particular, if you follow your Twitter account or look at your work, is, one, how busy you are. But really, your positivity and your focus on solutions, and I think it really comes out in the Climate Change Task Force report. You went around the state. Now, I guess during COVID, it was mostly brought people to you virtually, but thousands of people participated. I was one of those, and you guys have come up with some really, I would say, forward-thinking and great recommendations. I wonder, could you just talk to us a little bit about the report and some of the recommendations?
Absolutely. The report was, it was a lot of hard work. I definitely can't sit and take credit for putting the report together. Got an amazing team that helped make that a reality. And I will say, as you mentioned, the pandemic, it changed the way that those task force meetings happen, but it did open it up to more people. And we may not have gotten as much public input if these were in-person events. And we had 5 virtual listening sessions, and over 1,000 people from across the state participated in those listening sessions. And we had participation from 69 of 72 counties. And I am so excited about that, because that means that more people from the state had a chance to deliver their input and give their opinion to the process. And that's an amazing thing for us, because we want it to have as diverse and varied a perspective as possible. So with that being said, we came up with 55 recommendations that span 9 different sectors. A number of those key provisions did make it into the governor's budget. And some of those provisions include the doubling of the focus on energy investment, the establishment of the Office of Environmental Justice, which is incredibly important to a number of people. It might sound ambitious, but I'll be the first to say that's probably one of the least ambitious proposals, because we are one of 2 or 3 Great Lakes states that does not have this office. So that is us playing catch up. And, some of the other provisions include, the research grants for clean energy, which is going to help our university system become even stronger and more attractive to people. There's the expansion of low-cost debt financing for clean energy projects, on-bill financing for people to make it more affordable for folks to be able to get clean energy directly into their homes. And the funding for EV infrastructure and the EV state fleet. These are some amazing things. And like I said, those 55 recommendations span 9 different sectors. There's almost every aspect of life here in the state that is impacted by climate change, and we wanted the report to reflect that.
Very cool. I think you touched, Mandela, on how there was some areas where Wisconsin is very much lagging or behind in what other Midwest states in the nation is doing. What is your sense that Wisconsin could be a leader in different areas? What areas may those be? And what areas do you think that will continue to struggle to play catch up beyond what you just talked about?
Could be. I mean, we were. That's the thing. We were. This is so not novel. That's the thing about it. And I would love to say, oh man, I came up with all this stuff for the state. I had all these great ideas, but no, it's just us doing the things that we were doing before. It's about us assuming that position of leadership. It's about us stepping up to the plate like we had before. The fact is we were dormant for 8 years, and those 8 years that we were dormant, there were a lot of amazing things happening all across the country. And we just were not participating in that activity. So for me, it's getting back in the game before we can even claim the title of MVP. But we're gunning for it, right? That's it's healthy competition. Is the type of competition we should be engaged in. We should be involved in. We should want to beat out Minnesota. We should want to beat out Michigan and Illinois. And you look to the Southwest and Iowa, the amount of energy generation they get from wind, it's like it was a couple years ago, it was at 40%. Right. So I look at a state with a Republican governor, with a Republican controlled legislature, and the question just becomes, why not us? How can we not get this done? Why wouldn't we want this to get done? And so with that being said, I think we have all the resources we need at our disposal. We're surrounded by 3 bodies of fresh water. We have incredible open spaces here in Wisconsin. We have a thriving agriculture industry here in Wisconsin. Our state is a leader in freshwater sciences. And when we put all those things together, I think that the opportunities lie within our ability to, as the governor says, connect the dots, looking at where our farmers have, land that may not be used as much. We can explore options for solar or for wind, especially when the option for a 3rd, 4th, 5th generation farmer is having to sell that land that's going to be developed, which is going to have negative impacts on our environment for the long term, if not permanently. And we can look at carbon sequestration, ways to pay farmers to be able to contribute, to continue to contribute to our food systems. When we can help out our farmers, we can help them stay right there on the land and be able to continue to contribute while generating some extra income. I think we're doing an amazing job, and that's an area where we can be a leader.
You're listening to the Rise Up Midwest podcast. We'll get back to the podcast after this short sponsor break. The Panasonic Total Home Energy System doesn't just deliver clean power, it delivers peace of mind, thanks to long-lasting performance, battery storage you can depend on, and a full system warranty. Let's take your solar business to profitable new levels together. Panasonic, one system, one warranty, one partner, with trust built in. To become an authorized Panasonic installer or a certified Evervolt installer, contact your Panasonic regional sales manager and get started today. And now, back to the podcast.
You obviously have, and the administration have done your homework with the listening sessions and the report. And I think for all of us paying attention, you generated some really great proposals as part of the budget process. And one of the things that I really appreciated is, a lot of times the public policy proposals need to recognize the market conditions and And in the clean energy space, what market conditions need is just fair rules. Like you said, access to financing and stable market conditions. And what I saw in actual studies, for example, this idea of studying the racial disparities in energy, just to have a baseline of what are we talking about when we talk about energy equity or energy justice issues. And so I was really impressed with the budget. It hit the Joint Finance Committee and has pretty much everything's been removed as far as I understand. Can you talk about the process of actually advancing some of these policies and other programs and how people can get involved to help that process work for the people of Wisconsin?
I guess I'll start from the back by saying the people here in the state can help by contacting their legislators, especially if they are represented by someone who's not shown any sort of inclination to support clean energy or support our state's efforts to combat climate change. Also in the task force report, the recommendations all had, the prescription, right? Some things were going to be in state budget. Some things are going to be separate legislation. There are other items that can be impacted through agency rulemaking. And then there are also things that could be done through executive action. And so, for instance, the creation of the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy. Having that office is going to do a great deal to help the state develop our clean energy plan. When the Department of Safety Professional Services, when they update their building codes, that is going to go a long way and to determining what sort of construction takes place here in the state, what sort of buildings are we building. There should be no new buildings going up that don't have certain efficiency standards. And especially when we're talking about tax credits for lower income housing, we should be making sure that those spaces are healthy, making sure that those spaces are contributing positively to our efforts to combat climate change, not negatively. And if you're going to get a single dime of taxpayer dollar, you should have efficiency components tied to those projects, tied to those tax credits.
You touched on what gives you optimism and what the different cities have been doing throughout the state of Wisconsin that a lot of us, I think, are unaware of. That's a trend that I've noticed in the past few years, too. A lot of different local jurisdictions picking up action, taking action, having sustainability committees and really moving some different projects forward. And then coupling that with some state leadership as well. I think Wisconsin is poised to have a really good action plan moving forward on climate change. Aside from cities, something else that I've noticed in my work is the voice of young people coming out and getting engaged at their schools, at their city level. And I'm wondering if you had any experience in talking to the next generation and what their perspectives are on things and how they're getting involved differently than they did before.
Yeah, that's usually my answer too. Young people and their passion about addressing climate change, something that absolutely inspires me. I remember first year here in office, Lieutenant Governor, a group of young people, youth climate action team here on the campus of UW showed up to the office and they demanded a whole lot. And, rightfully so. And one of the members, we ended up adding to the task force. And she became a central piece to the work because she brought a perspective that was so much different. Not only was she young, her family immigrated from South America. And, she talked about climate forced migration that, so many families, so many people across the world are dealing with. And it's an issue we're going to have to tackle sooner or later. I mean, we're talking about places that are just going to be uninhabitable. Not only specifically as it relates to Wisconsin, but the fact is if people are, coming up to areas like ours in droves, we're going to have to think about the impact of that sort of population increase. What does that mean for our food systems? What does it mean for our water systems, in the event of, right? Just all things that we need to be prepared for. So I have made it a point to interact with young people on this issue a lot. There are a number of other groups as well that, even in Milwaukee, like Escuela Verde, just almost any sort of youth group on this issue I've tried to be intentional about engaging with.
I guess, one of the things that I see is that we talk about how we're all divided. And there is one divide that I think is under the radar. And that divide is there are those of us that are committed to a participatory democracy. And we agree to disagree, and we find common ground, and we listen to opposing views, and we understand that that's the history of this country, and that's how progress is made. And I think the frustrating part for those of us that believe in the democracy is that the partisanship has really ruined some of that. And one of the narratives that is out there about redistricting and fair maps is that when you draw maps that are competitive, which means they don't heavily favor Republicans or heavily favor Democrats, it becomes more of a competition of ideas, and it becomes more moderating, and it becomes less extreme. And we are right now in this kind of like battle for fair maps. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that. You've definitely not only circulated throughout the state and met many, many people, but you also circulate the Capitol and you see how the process goes. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the state of our democracy, redistricting, and how you're engaging in that.
Yeah, definitely. Fair maps allow for competition of ideas, but it also has baked in accountability. You have to respond to the will of the people. If you are going to be judged by the will of the whole, without fair maps, with gerrymandering, people are responding to a partisan constituency just to make it through a primary, because it is almost effectively guaranteed that you get past the primary, you are going to win the general in most legislative races here in the state. So with that being said, all the popular issues amongst the public, whether it's healthcare, whether it's universal background checks, whether it is aggressively combating climate change, or even legalization of cannabis, I think that people aren't getting what they're asking for, not getting what they have demanded of their lawmakers. So I personally see a process playing out, with fair maps that brings about more decency, one, and two, more responsiveness. People are struggling, and they don't have time for the partisan games, right? Like, people's quality of life is in jeopardy in so many instances because they have non-responsive leaders, because those leaders don't have to acknowledge the issues that people are dealing with for the most part, and they get those issues dismissed. Like an issue like universal background checks for firearm purchases, right? This is overwhelmingly support. Over 80% of people in the state support this. There's no logical reason why we aren't moving that direction, and all you get is excuses from people that don't want things to change because they benefit from this system that not only has gerrymandering as a base, but also campaign finance. That's another big one as well. These are two of the biggest inhibitors of democracy, in my opinion.
You're listening to the Rise Up Midwest podcast. We'll get back to the podcast after this short sponsor break. Today's episode is brought to you by Energy News Network. From the Midwest and beyond, the Energy News Network provides daily updates on the transition to a clean energy economy. Sign up for any of their free daily regional newsletters at energynews.us. And now, back to the podcast.
On a positive note, what gives you optimism about the state of democracy in Wisconsin, how we can keep moving things forward?
What gives me optimism is that people aren't letting up. People are becoming more aware of the things that are holding us back from progress. People are becoming more engaged. People are demanding more. People aren't asleep, and that's a good thing. The more people who are involved in democracy, the more effective that democracy works. And I think that we are, for all the upsets, for all the heartbreaks that people have to deal with, all the challenges that people are experiencing, the fact that, they are more in tune, in my opinion, than many points in my lifetime. I'm excited about it. I'm encouraged by it. And I think that is going to make the difference in the long run. And I know for sure that things won't be this way forever.
For someone who may not be very active politically in the state of Wisconsin or engaged in the politics of what's going on, could you give some information on how folks can catch up and see what's happening and continue to stay involved? What are the main websites that they can go to or resources that they can reach out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our website, we try to keep up to date with information. That is barnes.wi.gov. You mentioned social media. This is done on the official side. So for me, LG Mandela Barnes on Twitter, on Instagram, also on Facebook. And we try to keep that stuff up to date to let people know what we're up to personally, but to also get out important information as we're able to.
Okay, one last question for me. All right. Now, Mandela, you've just been given the magic wand. You can make any energy policy happen right now. Doesn't need a vote. All you have to do is wave that magic wand. What are you doing? What would be your biggest priority?
Oh, biggest priority would be... So I'm trying to be realistic about this, even though it is a magic wand, as realistic as a magic wand can get. I would say that we would have, all the state's operations would be net zero. I think that I'll just say that the whole, not even just state operations, the state will be net zero emissions. Net zero emissions for our state. We would be the first state to achieve that. That would be my magic wand.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I have one final question for you, and it's going to be a really hard one. I know that you are also a runner, and you've run a few marathons, I think, at this point. Any plans to run new ones? I know that races are kind of starting to open up. I ran my first race since post-COVID. What's next on the agenda for you?
You did the Monona 20K?
I did. It was awesome.
Nobody told me about it.
Oh.
I found out about it the day of when I saw a friend post. I'm like, well, what, you didn't think to tell me? You didn't think I would be interested in this?
Oh, it was really cool. Seeing the people and the races and it was just such a rush again. Yeah.
So the Madison Mini is in July and I intend to run that one. And I got in the Chicago Marathon this year.
Yay. I did that in 2018. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, the Chicago Marathon. Got a few friends that are doing it too. Already booked a hotel, so ready for it.
Have you done Chicago before or no?
I have not. I heard good things.
There's entertainment every quarter mile, I think, along the course. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Races nothing will compare, I think, to Chicago once you do it. It'll all be like, oh, you don't have a full orchestra on the side of the route. What am I supposed to do? So,
well, I am certainly looking forward to it.
Cool. Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Well, thanks for sharing your time with us today. I know you have a very busy schedule. Is there any last words, anything you'd like to part with us today?
No, this has been great. I do this all the time. This is fun.
We'll take you up on that. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you.
This Rise Up podcast was hosted by Nick Hyla and Amanda Schennebeck. Editing and sponsor copy read by Matthew Brown. Led by the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, Rise Up Midwest is a coalition of individuals, businesses, and organizations working to build support for common sense clean energy policy and market development. For past episodes and to sign up for new episode alerts, visit riseupmidwest.org. The Rise Up podcast is provided for educational purposes. Views expressed by guests and MREA employees are their own and do not imply endorsement by the Rise Up Midwest Coalition or the MREA.